Hello, I'm Anthony, the Eclectic Chef. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a repeat visitor. Today we're going to talk about Kisi amber dry wine from Kakheti in Georgia. Looking at the front label, you'll see the brand name, Ibaruli. Kisi is the name of the grape. It's made in qvevri, so it's a product of that 8,000-year-old Georgian winemaking technology. It's an amber dry wine. We'll talk about that after the taste test. It's made by Shumi and it's coming from Kakheti. If we look at the shelf of the store where I buy this is Lely International Supermarket in Peoria, Arizona, you'll see that it's the more expensive of the Georgian wines, and I paid $18 a bottle for this. Anyway, next is coming up the taste test. Then we'll talk about the wine label a little more from the back and how it's made, the winery, and then we'll talk specifically about Kisi and Georgia and Georgian wine a little bit. I'll put a timeline in the description so that those of you who only want to see a part of this presentation can do that. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy this video about Kisi Georgian wine. Okay, so here's our Kisi amber dry wine from Georgia. Made in Kakheti. Not all Kisis are. Kisi is a grape variety, by the way. We'll have a look at the label on the back. We're going to taste this in one of my new aerating glasses. Hope you can see the dark amber colour of this wine. Not a white wine at all. So we'll come back and tell you what we think once we've had a taste of this. Okay, reading straight from my tasting notes. Nose, fruity, very, very fruity, of ripe, soft fruits. It's like a combination of pear and lychee, which I don't think I've tasted in or smelt in a wine before. Colour, it's this dark amber, as you can see. Has strong tannins, but they're not overly strong. It's also dry, but not excessively so. Decent fruity finish. I personally think the nose is stronger than the taste, which is similar to the nose, the fruits, but it's not as distinct. This is a very smooth and easy drinker. I will tell you, this is a wine which the sous chef has really taken to. She has a very different palate to me, by the way, and I talk all the time about how palates can be different with wine, so please bear that in mind. But I give this quite a thumbs up, and I'm not much of a white or amber wine drinker, so just take that for what it is. I like this. Let's start by looking at the back of the label on this bottle of Kisi. So the first thing we note is the wine is made in qvevri, which are those large clay pots or amphorae that are buried in the ground and where the wine ferments for several months, in this case 6. You'll see it says after 6 months contact with chacha. With a capital C, that would be a Georgian brandy, but in this case it means the whole product of the grapevine, with stalks, maybe some leaves, the skins and the grape juice. That's what actually gives this wine its amber colour. Stays in the qvevri for 6 months, in which case, it's put in oak barrels for 4 months. It talks about the flavour. I've already talked to you about that. I'd be very interested to see how this did if it was in oak for, say, a year, but that's a story for another day. I have a couple of maps for you so you can see the wineries backed up by the hills and the mountains. To the southwest of here, by the way, is Tbilisi, the Georgian capital. It's in the Kakheti River Valley and actually alongside, aptly named in this case, the Kisi River. It's a lovely place, lots of history in the village that the winery is. I'll put a link to the TripAdvisor page on the winery tours just for your interest. And just in closing, there's a couple of pictures of the workers at the harvest and a shot of one of the vineyards in the winery. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the Kisi grape specifically, and wine and winemaking in Georgia since its separation from the Soviet Union. Hello everyone, and now we'll just close up with a little bit more of a conversation on Kisi, specifically the grape, Georgian wines, and recent Georgian history as it impacts the wine industry there. Kisi, as a grape, we learn from the book The Wines of Georgia, was nearly extinct by 2000. So we might say that, like the Georgian people, it's something of a survivor. It's quite a hardy grape, late bloomer, although it can be fussy to take care of in the vineyards. But more to the point, it's a low yielder compared to other grapes in the Kakheti region, which may explain why, if you go back and look at the price per bottle compared to other similar Georgian wines, that it's a little bit more expensive. Lisa Granick's book, Wines of Georgia, is probably a great source if you want to learn about them. Now, it's a shame to have to introduce politics into this, but we have to. Life in Georgia since the separation and breakup of the Soviet Union, up until about 2010, and maybe for a few years after that, was very hard on the Georgian people. Russia, as we see today in Ukraine, has a nasty habit of going around grabbing things it wants without necessarily having everybody agree with it. And this led to a bit of a disagreement in Abkhazia, which is in the north of Georgia, and then in 2008, a war between Georgia, Abkhaz and Russian forces. Now, prior to all this unpleasantness, Russia was the main market for Georgian wines, which instantly dried up because of the war. You can imagine that, I'm sure. Now, that's all to our benefit, because the Georgians have had to look to traditional winemaking, and they're really finding markets in Europe and the USA. And I'm glad of that, but I'm very sorry for their tribulations. Now, you can't talk about Georgian wines without talking about Georgian food. This is, the video doesn't want to show it, but it's called Supra. A great book written by Tico Tuskadze, the owner of Little Georgia in London. There she speaks, only in a short part, about just how hard things were in Georgia after the breakup with the Soviet Union. Now, you know, it's interesting. I don't know if the video is going to let me show you this. This is another book. Doesn't want to do this for some reason. There we go. John Steinbeck's A Russian Journal. This book was written in, I think, 1949. It talks about John Steinbeck's journey through countries of the Soviet Union and Georgia right after the Iron Curtain fell. Now, it's interesting, because everybody he talked to in the Soviet Union before he went to Georgia told him, oh, you'll love Georgia, the wines are great, blah, blah, blah. When he got there, he found the Georgian people were nothing like the other people in the Soviet Union. Much more outgoing, jovial, a real sense of identity. And he talks a little bit about Georgia and Georgian wines. If you're something of a student of history like me, you might enjoy reading that book. So, with that, this is a continuation of our conversation about Georgia and Georgian wines. The Kisi, in my opinion, just to close out, is really interesting because it is a product of the qvevri. And the winemaking with the stems skinned seeds. And the seeds, by the way, it's important to point out in this, really lend to the tannin in wines. That's where a lot of it comes from. Now, there's strong tannin in Kisi, but it's not overpowering or objectionable. So I don't know what the supplies are like in your area of the country. The importer's name's on the label. You should be able to pull it off from the video, but I will put it in the description. And if you have trouble, you might want to write to them and ask them, hey, where can I buy some of this? Because it really is part of drinking history. 8,000 years of winemaking history. That's very hard to wrap your head around, I know. But in closing, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this video and this monologue a little bit. If you did, and you haven't already, I'd very much appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to our channel, because it really does make a difference. But in closing, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day in your kitchen.